Good afternoon, class, and welcome to today's lecture. For today, we're going to be continuing our focus on memory as a whole. Specifically, today, we're going to be covering forgetting, memory construction, and memory improvement. So let's get this started. Okay. So as I mentioned before, this information, there won't be any more evaluations, test quizzes, assignments for the year. This is more just to make sure that I'm giving and covering all the important information that we need to cover. So at the start of this slide, you'll see at the bottom, there's a YouTube video that you can go to check, to listen to and learn a little bit about what we're going to cover today. So in terms of what we're going to cover forgetting, which will include forgetting and the two-track mind, encoding failure, storage decay, and retrieval failure. Then we're going to look at memory construction errors, which will involve misinformation and imagination effects, source amnesia, discerning true and false memories, children's eyewitness recall, and repressed or constructed memories of abuse, ? And then finally, we'll look at improving memory. So I'm going to move beyond this. Forgetting, not always a bad thing. Wouldn't it be good to have brains that stored information like a computer does, so we could easily retrieve any stored item and not just the ones we rehearsed? What would that feel like? Would there be any problems? If we remembered everything, maybe we could not prioritize the important memories. So, what leads to forgetting? Brain damage, encoding failure, storage decay, retrieval failure, interference, and motivated forgetting. Yes, I would like you to know some of the things that do lead to forgetting. So just to add to that, we might have difficulty thinking abstractly and making connections if our brain was developed to compiling isolated bits of information. The difficulty in thinking abstractly may be part of the problem in autism spectrum disorder. For people on the autistic spectrum, parts of the brain develop strengths, including prodigious memory for isolated bits of information, but communication across the brain and connected, coordinated, abstract thought is impaired. So let's move along. So the brain and the two-track mind, the case of Henry Mollison. The removal of HM's hippocampus at age 27 ended his seizures, but also ended his ability to form new explicit memories. HM could learn new skills, procedures, locations of objects, and games, but had no memory of the lessons or the instructors. Why? HM retained memories from before the surgery. What is this condition called? So that's a picture of the man himself, and we're going to take a look at both HM and Jimmy, which are mentioned here, and what was affecting them. So let's move along with that. Brain damage and amnesia. So HM and Jimmy suffered from hippocampus damage and removal, causing anterograde amnesia, an inability to form new long-term declarative memories. Please, yes, I want you to know what anterograde amnesia is. Jimmy and HM could still learn how to get places, automatic processing, could learn new skills, procedural memory, and acquire conditioned responses. However, they cannot remember any experiences which created these implicit memories. Let's move along. So, retrograde amnesia refers to an inability to retrieve memory of the past. And anterograde amnesia refers to an inability to form new long-term declarative or explicit memories. Retrograde amnesia can be caused by head injury or emotional trauma and is often temporary. It can also be caused by more severe brain damage. In that case, it may include anterograde amnesia. HM and Jimmy lived with no memories of life after surgery. Weird. See also the movie Memento. Most other movie amnesia is retrograde amnesia. So for those of you who are actually interested, not only for the sake of understanding memory and how it relates to this lecture, I would honestly say Memento is a fantastic movie. I'd probably put it in my top 15, top 20 movies of all time. I definitely recommend you to go see that. So at the bottom, we have a graphic. So we have lifespan. So RA, old memories are inaccessible with retrograde amnesia. Any moving forward, trauma, injury, and surgery. And then AA, anterograde amnesia. No past trauma or memories formed. Encoding failure. If we can't state exactly what a penny looks like, did we fail to retrieve the information? I'll let you guys think about that for a second. Maybe we never paid attention to the penny details. Even if we paid attention to it enough to get it into working memory, maybe we still didn't bother rehearsing it and encoding it into long-term memory. So you have a graph at the bottom that shows external events, and that goes into sensory memory that we spoke about in our last lecture. Thousands of information and data that go into sensory memory. We then only pay attention to certain bits of that information, which ideally we move into our working or short-term memory. Once it's put there through encoding and through different techniques like rehearsal, we can move it into long-term memory. If that encoding fails, we forget. Storage decay. So memory fades or decays, always. Material encoded into long-term memory will decay if the memory is never used, recalled, and restored. What hasn't decayed quickly tends to stay intact long-term. Decay tends to level off. So memory decays rapidly for both. And Ebbinghaus is nonsense syllables and his Spanish lessons. So this is just a chart and a graph that explains a little bit about this study and experiment. I'll let you guys take a look at that as I move along with the lecture. Also, again, there are some points at the bottom of the slides. If you guys please just want to take a look at that. It explains about the graph and what it's showing, and then it also adds that decay is long-term potentiation, which we discussed last lecture, in reverse, or like pruning. Unused connections and networks wither while well-used memories traces are maintained and strengthened. So let's move along. Tip of the tongue, retrieval failure. Sometimes the memory doesn't decay. Some stored memories seem just below the surface. I know the name, it starts with a B maybe? To prevent retrieval failure when storing and rehearsing memories, you can build retrieval cues, linking your memorized material to images, rhymes, categories, initials, lists, etc. And we saw that in the last lecture. And again, a chart at the bottom with images showing how this works. To add to that, this retrieval failure is prominent with neurocognitive disorders when connections across the brain are breaking down and even everyday words and the names of friends can be hard to retrieve. Psychotherapy can slow the functional impairment by helping develop habits of priming and cueing and building new pathways and associations to reconsolidate and help retrieve memories. Interference and positive transfer. So, old and new memories can interfere with each other, making it difficult to store new memories and retrieve old ones. Proactive interference occurs when past information interferes in a forward-acting way with learning new information. An example of that would be, you have many strong memories of a previous teacher, and this memory makes it difficult to learn the new teacher's name. Some of you might have even experienced this with me. Occasionally, the opposite happens. In positive transfer, old information, like algebra, makes it easier to learn related new information, like calculus. And to add, although our memory storage never gets full, the fact that memories overlap across the brain means that they can interfere with each other's storage and with retrieval. So, retroactive interference and sleep. Retroactive interference occurs when new stimuli or learning interferes with the storage and retrieval of previously formed information or memories, I should say. Okay. So, and there we go. In one study, students who studied right before 8 hours of sleep had better recall than those who studied before 8 hours of daily activities. Sorry about that. Let's get back to business. Okay, so we were looking at retroactive interference, and I had mentioned that retroactive interference occurs when new stimuli or learning interferes with the storage and retrieval of previously formed memories. So in one study, students who studied right before 8 hours of sleep had better recall than those who studied before 8 hours of daily activities. Oops. And there you see the study. Okay, so motivated forgetting. Memory is fallible and changeable, but we can practice motivated forgetting, that is, choosing to forget or to change our memories. Sigmund Freud believed that we sometimes make an unconscious decision to bury our anxiety-provoking memories and hide them from conscious awareness. He called this repression. Okay, so, and for those of you who are not aware, repression was, so I'm sure some of you have already heard the term defense mechanisms. Defense mechanisms were part of Freud's psychoanalytic theory. What Freud believed is that, just as a bit of a side point, the defense mechanisms were ways in which an individual's ego, a part of their personality structure, distorted and warped reality in order to avoid threats to it. So what it did is what felt threatening were anxiety-inducing or provoking experiences, and the ego used defense mechanisms to distort and change the way we experienced or saw reality so that it was no longer threatening to us. They were put on a hierarchy of more complex defense mechanisms, and repression was the most basic and the first one that could be used anywhere from someone from an infant all the way till someone who's a senior. Okay, let's get back to the topic. Motivated forgetting is not common. So, one, painful memories tend to persist. For the 3 reasons why motivated forgetting is not common, painful memories tend to persist. 2, most memories can fade if we don't rehearse or use the memories. And 3, it is hard to try to forget. Okay. So, forgetting summary. Forgetting can occur at any memory stage. As we process information, we filter, alter, or lose much of it. And you'll see that up here. So sensory memory, right? Like we're bombarded with thousands of bits of information and data that our senses are picking up in every second, every moment. From there, as it moves into working memory, there are certain bits of all of that information that we choose to pay attention to. Right? So a few items are both noticed and encoded. And you notice that the number of dots is significantly reduced. As you then move to putting that into long-term storage through forms of encoding in terms of rehearsal, things like that, right? Again, more and more of that information is lost. And then the final stage, retrieval from long-term memory. Depending on interference, retrieval cues, moods, and motives, some things get retrieved and others don't. So you see how it kind of filters down and dwindles down, and what you started with all that richness of information no longer exists when you get to the bottom of it. Okay. So, ways in which our memory ends up being an inaccurate guide to the past. The misinformation effect, imagination inflation, source amnesia, deja vu, and implanted memories. So, I mean, some things I think stand out for themselves that are important to remember. Yes, I do want you to be familiar with the 5 ways in which our memory ends up being an inaccurate guide to the past. So memory not only gets forgotten, but it gets constructed, imagined, selected, changed, and rebuilt. Memories are altered every time we recall, actually reconstruct them. Then they are altered again when we reconsolidate the memory, using working memory to send them into long-term storage. Later information alters earlier memories. And then finally, no matter how accurate and video-like our memory seems, it is full of alterations, even fictions. Okay, so the misinformation effect. Incorporating misleading information into one's memory of an event. In 1974, Elizabeth Loftus and John Palmer asked people to watch a video of a minor car accident. The participants were then asked, how fast were cars going when they hit each other? Actual accident. Those who were asked how fast were the cars going when the cars smashed into each other reported higher speeds and remembered broken glass, even though it didn't exist. The misremembered accident. On the bottom of the slides, there are a couple of videos that you can go and check out that further explain the misinformation effect. And what's important to note, you'll see here, it also says that a change in the way a question is asked can change the memory that is reported. So, implanted memories. In a study by Elizabeth Loftus, people were asked to provide details of an incident in childhood when they had been lost in a shopping mall, which had not happened. By trying to picture details, most people came to believe that the incident had actually happened. They had acquired an implanted memory. So, and then imagination inflation. Once we have an inaccurate memory, we tend to keep adding more imagined details, as perhaps we do for all memories. In a study, kids with an implanted memory of a balloon ride later added even more imagined details, making the memory longer and more vivid. So what are the lessons to take away from this? One, by trying to help someone recall a memory, you may implant a memory. And two, you can't tell how real a memory is by how real it feels. And I think for some of you, you might be starting to see how this may relate when people are taking testimonies from people who about an incident, a crime, eyewitness testimony, right? Based on the way that a reporter, an investigator, anybody involved can ask the question about what happened, can alter people's memory, right? And we saw that with the last slide. It can cause a misinformation effect, which is scary, right? Because we use these accounts to kind of get a sense or an idea of what really happened, the truth behind the matter. But what we're starting to realize now is that they're not very reliable or accurate accounts of information, yet we hold on to them so dearly. It's scary, right? Like, think about how many times we've gone and asked somebody for their account or their report about what happened, only to learn right now in this class that there's so many different things that could affect their ability to provide an accurate account of what actually transpired. Damn. Okay, let's move along. Source amnesia, misattribution. So, have you ever discussed a childhood memory with a family member only to find that the memory was from a movie you saw or a book you read, from a story someone told you about your childhood but they were kidding, or from a dream you used to have, and finally, from a sibling's experience? If so, your memory for the event may have been accurate, but you experienced source amnesia, forgetting where the story came from and attributing the source to your own experience. This is an example of source amnesia, forgetting where it came from, and then misattribution, attributing the source to your own experience when in fact it wasn't. So an example on the bottom is the songwriters unintentionally plagiarizing something they earlier read or heard. And then there's a couple of videos, as always, to help support this slide and this notion, concept. So deja vu. Deja vu refers to the feeling that you're in a situation that you've seen or have been in before. Why does this happen? Sometimes it's because our sense of familiarity and recognition kicks in too soon when we first view a scene. Our brains then make sense of this feeling of familiarity by seeing the scene as recalled from a prior experience. Deja vu can be seen as source amnesia, a memory from current sensory memory that we misattribute as being from long-term memory. Always, as usual, a video to support this at the bottom of the slide. Constructed memories in court and in love. Television courtroom shows make it look like there is often false testimony because people are intentionally lying. However, it is more common that there is mistaken testimony. People are overconfident about their fallible memories, not realizing that their memories are constructions. We tend to alter our memories to fit our current views. This explains why hindsight bias feels like telling the truth. When in love, we overestimate our first attraction. After a breakup, we recall being able to tell it wouldn't work. Constructed memories and children. With less time for their memories to become distorted, kids can be trusted to report accurately, right? No, because kids have underdeveloped frontal lobes. They are even more prone to implanted memories. In one study, children who were asked what happened when an animal escaped in a classroom had vivid memories of the escape, which had not occurred at all. For kids, even more than adults, imagined events are hard to differentiate from experienced events. The lesson? When interviewing kids, don't lead them with certain questions. Be neutral and non-suggestive in your questions. Recover memories of past abuse. Can people recover memories that are so thoroughly repressed as to be forgotten? Abuse memories are more likely to be burned in to memory than forgotten. Forgotten memories of minor events do reappear spontaneously, usually through cues or accidental reminders. An active process of searching for memories, however, is more likely to create detailed memories that feel real. False memories, implanted by leading questions, may not be lies. People reporting events that didn't happen usually believe they are telling the truth. Questionnaires who inadvertently implant memories in others are generally not trying to create memories to get others into trouble. As a result, unjust false accusations sometimes happen, even if no one intended to cause injustice. And there are a lot of reports of false testimonies or false memories that are being used to incriminate, indict, and imprison a lot of people. It's kind of scary when you think about it, actually. What can we know about past abuse? While true, repressed recovered memories may be rare, unreported memories of abuse are common. Whether to cope or to prevent conflict, many survivors of abuse try to get their minds off memories of abuse. They do not rehearse these memories, and sometimes the abuse memory fades. Because of the infantile amnesia effect, memories of events before age 3 are likely to be constructions. This explains both false reports and missed reports of abuse, thinking everything was fine. There is no clear way to tell when someone has actually been abused. An implanted constructed memory can be just as troubling and more confusing than a memory from direct experience. So, applying what we've learned about memory, improving memory to improve grades. So you see on the left, ways to save overall studying time and build more reliable memory. Learn the material in more than one way, not just by rote memorization, but by creating many retrieval cues. Think of examples and connections, meaningful depth. Create mnemonics, as we saw last lecture, in terms of songs, images, and lists. Another way is to minimize interference with related material or fun activities, studying right before sleep or other mindless activities. Another way, have multiple study sessions spaced further and further apart after first learning the material. Another way is to spend your study sessions activating your retrieval cues, both mnemonics and context. And then finally, test yourself in study sessions. And some of this we've seen in the last lecture. So 1, to practice doing retrieval as if taking a test, and 2, to overcome the overconfidence error. The material seems familiar, but can you explain it in your own words? Okay, so we've come to the end of the lecture for today. I thank you very much for taking the time to go through this material. As I said again, the remaining material, and I am going to release some more material next week, depending on your class, and I will email each class independently. It's for you. There's nothing requiring you or forcing you to go through the material. There's nothing that's going to allow me to check if you have. It's really more making sure that you have a solid foundation and information base to continue on in this program here at Champlain College, or for any of you who are possibly looking to pursue this at the university level and or make it a career. I hope you and your families and loved ones are continuing to stay safe, stay healthy, and to stay happy during these trying times. Thank you very much. Take care. Have a great day.